Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called Management Likes Mystery. This was from about 10 years ago. I worked in a plastics extrusion plant. We made grain bags and greenhouse cover and garbage bags and all sorts of thin plastic things. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of it a month. All of it came from little plastic pellets the size of a small pea. Different companies made differently composed pellets that did different things. They were all mixed, melted, turned into a 7-story tall 60 feet wide bubble, cooled and folded and rolled, at around 50 feet per minute. Thanks to previous management, we also had a good union contract. So good that we got paid when the power was out. When the machines were broken. Didn't matter. If the plant wasn't on a planned shutdown, we come to work, even if nothing's working. And these giant machines that did all the work had to be especially shut down when they closed the plant. If you just turn them off and left, the plastic inside would harden and you had to completely dismantle them and chip it apart, piece by piece. This would take several weeks of work. But a full shutdown and startup took around a week when done properly. So they would avoid shutting down and sending us home. Cheaper to pay us to sit. Anyways, part of my job was taking inventory. A giant warehouse with hundreds of giant boxes filled with these various little plastic pellets. Almost all of them look exactly the same, save a different number on each type. And of course, the empty boxes were stored here too. Close packed rows of everything. They usually brought in enough for a few weeks worth of work, but for some of the more special stuff, that could just be a box or two. So, you'd have to get out of the forklift, climb through the stacks, banging on the boxes to make sure they're not hollow because someone from the night shift threw empties in the wrong spot. One particular day, we were short-handed and the boss ordered me to bust hump on the inventory and get back to the line. So, I'm going at it, climbing around as best I can, when the boss comes hustling. He tears into me for being out of the forklift and messing around. I explain I have to check the numbers on all the boxes because sometimes they're messed up. He insists he can see the numbers just fine. I point out that you have to check to make sure the boxes are full. He yells that if we don't mess up that won't matter. I counter that if he wanted a messed up free crew, he worked for the wrong company. Things went downhill from there. I was a bit of a disturber at that place. Loved it. After a bit, I got him to issue a new work procedure, in writing, that inventory should now be done from inside the forklift by driving by these 6 deep stacks, 3 high, packed pretty close together, looking at whatever box happened to be closest, and assuming the entire row was full boxes of exactly the same type. It went exactly as well as you think it did. Soon enough, mystery boxes started appearing in rows, things got messed up, and one night, some poor new worker who was only allowed to drive forklift got screwed. He'd bring in a box, put it on the loading station, and the guy on the floor would open up an empty box and scream at him to get a full one. He'd dutifully return to the proper row, pick up a box, bring it back, and have it be empty. By the time he dug up a full one, it was too late, the line ran low and had to be shut down. One by one, they shut down over the weekend. As it turned out, we were woefully out of stock on a few key components. Management walking in on Monday morning to a quiet plant and a well-rested night shift waving cheerfully goodbye was a sight that warmed my heart. Sitting on his desk was a stack of every shift's inventory reports, stapled to a copy of the work procedure, and a signed note from our union chair, reminding the boss he couldn't take action against us for doing what he told us to do. In an exciting double feature of postscript action, one of the vital components we got came from pretty far away by rail, and thanks to a natural disaster between us, shipping was delayed. We all sat around idling the machines. We essentially were getting paid to watch movies, order pizza, and occasionally push a button unless it was your turn to sleep for a week, before they got desperate and paid to have the stuff trucked up. So the vacation was nice. And in a personal moment of triumph, as we had a company-wide meeting with all the big bosses and the boss, discussing how to prevent this and how much it cost, I stood up and suggested just making colored stickers, including bright empty ones. Since my previous job was an office job at an office supply company, I was able to tell them how we could just use our existing label printers and the different colors didn't even cost more than what we were using now, which by the way was the expensive one. The union chair pipes in that they'd asked for that a while ago and been turned down by the boss because, "I don't have time to look at your rainbow stickers, get some glasses." The curmudgeonly old-timer chimed in with a, "Who can afford glasses without benefits? When's our next contract meeting?" And the meeting dissolved into the boss looking bad, the boys having fun piling on, the upper management freaking out that we were going to throw a fit when our contract was up, and a sudden uptick in our working conditions. Also, I made sure the most common sticker was pink. The next story is called No Appointment, No Problem. So I was subjected to some delicious malicious compliance, which in turn I was able to return the favor monetarily. I'm essentially a courier, but for a large volume of smaller items, or larger items that won't fit conveniently on a FedEx-type trucks. The company I work for consolidated shipments at locations and groups them into large shipments, which I deliver to the end delivery point. It's a value-add rush type of service that conforms to tracked supply chains for medical and aerospace industries, our bread and butter. We operate on some expensive tariffs and contracts all agreed to before we carry anything on board. So, I'll drive 500 or so kilometers per day and visit 10 to 15 places, either delivering or picking up stuff to move. I generally visit the same places almost every day. This way you get to know the guys and ladies on the docks and they won't delay you if you don't delay them. I'm also paid by the hour with overtime, so while longer days aren't a deterrent, I do try to maintain some work and life balance. Last spring I get a newer customer added on my route that was going to make things kind of tight in the day, both in distance and time. However, the stuff they ordered regularly was hazardous material that only left me and another driver legally able to carry it. However, the struggles with the product paled in comparison with the attitude the customer had towards me right from the start. Now I have thick skin. You just have to let some things slide. But if you screw around with my earnings, I'll cut you. All my other stops were typically small warehouses or retail sites. This was an industrial plant in a rather large compound. I'd Google mapped it before, so I knew what I was getting into, but from day one, I was letting the boss know how much this was going to impact my route. So first shipment day came, and I planned on visiting this place in the middle of my route for the day. So there are a few trucks ahead of me and after 15 minutes of waiting, I arrive at the outer security gate. I said, "Hi, I'm here with 3 skids of product for this company. What's your appointment number?" "I don't have an appointment." "I can't let you in without an appointment." "Who are you here for?" "Company X, I'm basically a courier, I never work with appointments." "You need an appointment. Everyone has one." He relents and calls some shipper person who I guess vouches for me. So I get told where to go to the plant. "Now I need you to put on the equipment the site requires: a hard hat, reflective vest, eye protection, safety boots, long sleeve shirt and pants, ear protection, and gloves." Holy hell. I had it all, but who drives in all that? All that for a few minutes? "I can't let you on site without the required equipment. Now sign this lengthy form with all the site rules. And I'll need some ID to sign you in." I hand over my company ID. "I need a second ID since this is your first visit." I hand over my transportation worker identification credential card. "This photo doesn't look like you." "Yes, I have a beard now." "I haven't seen my chin in years." "Okay, you are registered now. Drive over to gate D and they will let you into the loading area." Finally, almost 30 minutes passed from the time I pulled up. I'm into the inner sanctum of this plant, get unloaded and make my way to the same guardhouse to exit. Time for round 2, the security asked, "Is the trailer sealed?" "No." "Why not?" "I was dropping off your product now. I have other deliveries to make." The security offers some suggestions to speed up, like wearing the security gear or having an appointment number. So in total, it took almost 90 minutes to visit a place that would normally take 15 for me to unload. I call the boss as I'm leaving, to let him know how hard this is going to impact the route. Stuff's going to have to shift around if this is a regular occurrence. Boss asks me if I logged the time spent. Of course. "Well, then let's bill for the delay. $240 added to the rate charged, that should get noticed. Our tariffs give 30 minutes free per stop. Afterwards, it's charged per 15 minutes. Tariffs agreed to by all parties before we carry anything." So, the above repeats itself a few times over the next few months. I know the routine well after the first, but it is still taking almost 90 minutes to get done. And each time I'm billing my delay time dutifully while following the site rules to the letter. After several months, I get to my unload point and there is a white hat there that I don't recognize. White hard hats are usually management or other non-labor staff. He asks me about all the detention pay I'm putting on the bill. I inform him that our delays start after 30 minutes and I'll spend that often waiting in line to get in. I explain that even today I'll be sending at least 1 hour of detention depending on how long it takes to get out. He says, "That can't be right." He holds my paperwork hostage for almost another 30 minutes until returning in a huff with another sheepish-looking white hat. "Show me where we agreed to this. We are your customer, you should be working to keep us happy." "I'm sorry, but that's between you and the business office. I can provide my boss's phone number so you can discuss this further, but I really need to be leaving. I have many other stops today." Finally, I'm out again, this time billing 90 minutes of wait time, so $360. I explained to the boss man what went down and how the jig is up. Monetary penalties have been noticed. Boss told me later in the day how this angry vice president tore me up for being generally unprofessional, not addressing his concerns and dragging my heels, making the detention claims higher. My boss stood up for me, explaining I complied with all site rules, never broke speed limit, but site security and check-in policies were the contributing factor to each detention request. In a huff, the vice president cancelled all deliveries until further notice. Well, this was Christmas for my boss. Now we can just store the products that are still arriving. At hazmat storage rates to boot. Few more weeks pass. I have a conversation with my boss over the tour of the day. I'm going back to Company X? Yes, but notice the address. They moved? Next door. Yes. Deliver it to the outside warehouse. They will move it in. Take this email with you. Best you don't even have to check in, just drive up to the exit ramp. They will just let you in like they do other delivery companies. So, I happily roll up to the exit gate, get out, see the same lovely security people and explain why I'm here. Email in hand, they succumb to reason and with minimal delay let me in. 15 minutes later I'm merrily on my way back in schedule, getting home at my regular times. I let the boss know it seems resolved and it remains so until the end of our contract with them. The last story is called, Accept Your Rules or Leave. After my sophomore year of college, I dropped out and moved back in with my parents. This meant going back to sharing a home with my mother, who was an emotionally abusive narcissist and alcoholic. Without getting into too many sob story details, living with her was the worst and usually involved drunken screaming from her at around 2, making it impossible to keep a regular schedule. The reason I dropped out of college was because of some major depression issues, and I knew that my home with my mum was only making the depression worse. I got a job so that I could start saving up money, and she went out of her way to make it challenging for me to be functional. Like I said, screaming in the night was really distracting if I had to be awake at 6. She tried to get me to quit multiple times. She tried to increase the amount of rent I paid her when she realized I was saving money, etc. I was in the process of buying a car off of her, and sometimes she would just take money from me to pay for stuff for the car without asking because, well, it's going to be your car eventually. Basically doing everything she can to keep me sad, dependent, and around to be her emotional support beacon. When I pushed back, she pointed out that I still relied on her financially, and that meant it was her way or the highway. At one point, I started dating. I had very few friends or hobbies. But I thought dating would be a cool way to meet new people and broaden my horizons. Long story short, I met a super cute cool great guy who became my boyfriend. He introduced me to swing and blues dancing and a whole community of dancers. Now, instead of just working, coming home, and dealing with mum, I could go out with my sweet boyfriend and the dancers. Social activity and exercise, all in one. My boyfriend knew about my issues at home and did the best he could to support me through the circumstances. He even helped me budget so I could save up more efficiently for my escape. I should mention at this point in the story that my boyfriend at the time was very financially literate and owned his home. He had a well-paying job, and while he wasn't buying me gifts or anything crazy, he was able to pay for dinner consistently, pay for entry to the dance events, etc. And he was able to give me really good advice. He showed me some sites on financial independence, which was great. This will all be important later. So, around now I had a lot of good things in my life and I wasn't stressing about school anymore. So I was really getting good at handling the depression. Of course, this meant mum was suspicious of my boyfriend and of these dancers. If we're just dancing, after all, how am I coming home after midnight? On to the day of the malicious compliance. My boyfriend was worried that my mum didn't trust him. So he sent her a message like, "Hello, I'm so-and-so," and invited her to come to a dancing lesson with us so he could help her learn and get to know her. I thought it was really sweet, and my mum was on board until the last minute and then backed out and tried to force me to stay home with her too. She does this kind of thing, so I was like, "No, you can cancel, but I'm still going to dance with my boyfriend." I should not have said this, apparently. To spare you details, this essentially devolved into a 1-hour shouting match where I was being disrespectful and ungrateful. I grabbed the car keys to leave, and she grabbed them back, saying I was no longer allowed to use the car. I had already given her over $1,000 to pay for the car, but the title was in her name still, so I knew I had no chance. I also knew she would legitimately call the cops on me if I decided to grab the keys back and take it anyway. I should mention my dad was home through all of this, but he was such a doormat he was probably watching a baseball game with the sound turned up to drown us out. My boyfriend was texting me throughout this because he didn't know why I was so late. He was expecting me and my mum to be at the dance studio an hour ago, and now he was nervous. While I was in another room, I gave him a rundown on the situation, and he was like, "If you pack your bags, I can come to get you right now. You don't have to stay with her ever again if you don't want to." I had never had anyone give me an out like that. And I had never thought of moving in with him as a possibility because I'd only been with this guy for 4 months. But now that he had offered, none of that mattered. I heard my mum screaming in the next room and suddenly my whole outlook changed. I walked out to talk to her, and for the 5th or 6th time she said something like, "If you don't want to follow my rules, you can get out of my house." But this time, I said, "Okay." She actually stopped yelling, I think because she was caught off guard. Calmly, I walked up to my room and locked the door behind me. I texted my boyfriend, "Let's do this." Outside my door, I heard my mum screaming. I started packing. Everything that was legitimately mine got packed up. It turns out my whole world fit into 3 suitcases, and it takes about an hour to do. Boyfriend pulled into my neighborhood before I was done, so we tried to time it so I could get to him with as little issues as possible. When I stopped hearing my mum, I took the suitcases and started calmly walking out to his car. My dad now decided to get involved, saying, "This is a bad idea. You know how your mum gets. She's not going to like this." On my way out, mum sees me with the suitcases and loses it. She screams, "What are you doing? I'm getting out of your house." Unfortunately, that was how my boyfriend met my parents. My mum screaming, my dad with his arms crossed, and me just trying my best to keep my composure until the suitcases were in the car. He nodded awkwardly to my dad like, "Hello, fellow man. Enjoy your screaming wife." And we pulled out. I stayed with boyfriend for about 3 months, then moved into my own place. My mum continued to be the worst until both boyfriend and I had to file restraining orders against her, both of which were granted by a judge. The last time I saw my parents was in a courtroom. Boyfriend and I broke up a few months after all the dust settled. He was sweet, but we weren't really compatible long-term partners, and the stress of my family took a toll on our relationship as well. We're still friends though, and he still gives me financial advice while we chat over coffee. This was 4 years ago and mum is far away from me. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day.